to start?
Recording.
Okay, I guess we're...
Just tell texting Tiffany and tell her it's working.
Mayor,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Anna,
Yes, ma'am.
Sarah,
Yes.
Dustin.
Yes.
Oh, please stand for the prayer, for the pledge. Dear Lord, I thank you for this wonderful day, and I thank you for the recent rain, and I ask you to watch over us as more storms come in, and I ask you to look over our community and over this governing body and help us to make good decisions. In Christ's name I pray, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Training and discussion necessary to participate in the Oklahoma Municipal Assurance Group Recognition Program, including adoption of a Perkins City Commission handbook.
All right. We did have David Wedford scheduled to come tonight to just deal with this issue and number 6. The training aspect of this agenda item, I think you've already done. And it's really more to discuss, and I guess it would have maybe been somewhat training if David had come and seen some things about our book that he doesn't like, which is still a possibility. But this is a living, breathing document, and your handbook can be changed at any time. And so one of the things that he and I discussed is that if he comes on a different date, we can always revisit or when he comes, he's still planning to come on a different day, we can discuss the handbook if there's something that somebody sees later, or, you know, it's always something that can be changed. I will also say that I've apologized to Bob many times and I think you've heard me, because I said to you guys, oh yeah, no problem, we can get a handbook, and then most of it he had to do. And so I think he's done a pretty good job. So hopefully you guys have had a chance to look at it. This book is probably three times the size of the handbook that OMAG puts up on their website as a possibility. It's probably a third the size of David Weatherford's. But I think this is probably more workable than David's as far as what you guys are, what counselors and commissioners are really going to read and work through. And so, like I say, we can add and change it as it goes. My only thoughts, I want us to answer any questions you have about anything in the handbook, and then I want to talk to you about about the sanctions section of the Code of Ethics. If you look at the Code of Ethics, and I'll just give you a preface and then we can come back to it, but you'll see that I've got two last pages in your book. One of the specific questions I asked Annie when she was fixing my error on this is whether these are three-ring binders, because what I'm thinking is I wanted you guys to be able to pass this book tonight if you want to, but I've got 2 different sanctions sections or proposals in that. In the book, you'll hopefully decide which one you want. We'll pull out the one you don't want. But other than that, the book I think is what staff is proposing. So, where do you wish to start, Mr. Mayor?
Well, does anybody have any questions or anything?
Where do y'all want to start?
No?
Is there a provision anywhere in our, I've missed it if there is there a provision anywhere that requires the commission to review it on an annual, triennial basis, anything like that?
There's nothing that requires you to, but if you don't, you won't qualify for OMAG's program and their $2,600 check every year.
So does that program require you to review your handbook? Okay, that's all I need to know.
Yes.
That's good, okay.
It does, that's one of their I think that actually their annual requirements are the same thing that that you have been through, except that the training is just for the new people who've come on during that year. You still have to look at your declarations, insurance like we did, I think. You still need to have to approve your handbook, any changes to the handbook, and do your self-evaluation, which I think we would want to do to see how you feel like, not that it's always the same people, but how in general you feel like things have changed. So I think it's a well worth the time and energy. It won't be nearly the energy and time that this, just getting the handbook put together initially would be. That it would probably be a good time for staff to propose some additions to the handbook and things like that.
Maybe we could just look at doing it in January, since wasn't that the first month we kind of started this? And it would be sort of an off time for staff members.
You mean you don't want to do it in the middle of budget season, Rachel?
Yes, that's true. We just might have to pass the resolution. We'll have to ask them how often they'll pay us is the issue. So,
Yeah, if it's a
Yeah.
calendar year, or if it's a fiscal year,
Right.
or whatever, I can ask them a
Yeah.
question.
It's,
yeah, it would be nice to not do it this time of year.
Yeah.
I agree. Any other questions?
your proposed page 13, so our option would be,
And then on the code of ethics.
yes, in the code of ethics.
Okay, let's talk about that real quickly then. If everybody will turn to the section code of ethics, it's about the third section. If you go to, okay. Page 12 has the beginning of the sanction section. That's going to be, or I'm proposing that be the same no matter what else goes from there. Page 13 and 14 are one possibility. Okay? And then there's another possibility of the new page 13. You'll see, and you can just pull them out if you want, but you'll see that they're very different in that one's real in-depth and the other one is not. In other words, the first paragraph on each page 13 is the same. The second paragraph talks about what you do if there's an allegation of a violation of the code of ethics. The short version is a kind of a redraft of David Weatherford's. Don't tell him, but his language didn't make sense to me. But once I went through and really I was able to make it make sense, and I feel like it's what he meant to say. And it covers it. It's just a lot broader, essentially saying both sections, both proposals say that the city manager and/or the city attorney should be directed to investigate any allegations, and then you take the next step that's appropriate. Short section says next step that's appropriate could include, and it just lists some broad possibilities and stops. Okay. On the long version, it lays out possibilities. You can do a referral, which quite frankly, under On this list of 5, if we see anything that needs to be referred, we being the city manager and I, probably would hopefully agree to that. But if we saw something that needed to be referred to another agency for investigation, we would probably do that. We probably wouldn't need your direction to do that, but we might bring it to you if it's a close call, depending on what the allegation is. The second option in that list is to issue a letter of notification when the violation is unintentional. Unintentional would be a matter of your interpretation. That's an option. Third is to issue a letter of admonition, not just notification, but admonition. If it's minor or may have been unintentional. Fourth is issuance of a letter of reprimand. If you find that it was intentional, it was knowingly or intentionally done. Fifth is passage of a resolution of censure or a recommendation of recall. And then the rest of that long form talks about is procedural. As to the procedures that should be followed if you're going to, and it's really the difference between, it sets out the difference between if you're doing a notification, admonition, or remand as opposed to a censure, which is the most serious of your options. So this puts some parameters around what your options are. I will tell you, I think I already did tell you kind of broadly. I pulled that language from another state several years ago when I was going through this process with the city of Bixby. Because they were like all over wanting this to be really laid out until they went through it and finally they were like, yeah, we'll take the short language. So, it really is dependent, it's completely up to you. Whether you want to make it specific as how to handle it, or you want to give yourselves more latitude. From a legal perspective, it's just going to really depend on the fact situation as to what, there's a good, I don't expect you ever to need this, but if you did, looking at the facts, I may sometime go, gosh, wish we had the long version. Or I may sometime go, gosh, wish we had the short version, depending on what the facts are. So I can't look at you and say either one is better because I don't know what the future holds. I'll answer any questions.
Does anybody have any thoughts or any opinions on it? I'll just say, my opinion, I kind of like the longer version better, just that way things are spelled out a little bit more, but collective decision, so.
I'm very torn.
I get it,
I'm ready for someone to tell me their perspective because I see the value in both of them. So I would love for someone to help sway me in one direction or the other.
I like the long version because to me it's based like state statute. If you violate this, then this is the consequence for that. And it tells you what you can do for that consequence. That's why I prefer the longer version.
I prefer to have a plan. So I like the longer version because it gives us options. And I feel like it does give us some flexibility to decide the severity of whatever we're dealing with as well. But it does provide direction.
Naturally, I like the short one because I think the long one puts you into a box and the short one gives you a lot more flexibility, but
From the legal perspective, you're going to have to follow, you're going to give someone a lawsuit more likely if you don't follow your own procedures. So it's one of those things where the long version is not a good idea if we're not going to really cross our T's and dot our I's. But on the other hand, I actually did some research, not far from specifically on this, and you can get sued for not following the procedures that are set out, or you can be sued because you didn't have any procedures to follow.
Well, that's helpful.
The most important takeaway is to never need it. That's the most
Exactly.
important takeaway.
Yeah.
I guess I'm torn mainly because, you know, my rose-colored glasses self likes to think that the need for this shouldn't be there if we are all doing the things we need to be doing. And so it's, I guess to me, that's one of those where, yes, it's great to have a plan, but I would like to think we would never even need to go there. So let's make it simple and move on. So, but I guess I'm still very torn. Like, I'd like to think we never go there. I'd like to think it's not even something we need.
The most important sentence in my view is the last sentence of that second paragraph that says commission action can include, but is not limited to. And so the fact that it says can include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doesn't mean it has to include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so, and part of the reason I say that is because the short version in 13 says discussion and counseling is an option. You know, some cases may just simply warrant a private discussion between the mayor and a commission member, or, you know, so anyway, I'm not going to dig my heels in on one version or the other. I think they both have merit.
I'm sorry, I'm not more helpful.
That's okay. So let me ask this question, because this document would also be a public document. What is the risk, and I'm really asking the 5 of us, what is the risk that a citizen would see page 13 and then say, well, you haven't done what this says, as opposed to page 13 short version, oh, well, you have lots of options here. Have you, you know, I don't know. I'm just curious. What is the risk? Do you see a perceived risk? Maybe I'm making something up.
Well, a citizen, this is not, this handbook doesn't establish any rights, and it certainly is, it is a internal document adopted by you to govern yourselves. It's not enforceable by the citizens. They couldn't sue and say you violated XYZ of your code of ethics. It's for your, it's what you're adopting for yourselves. So a citizen could come in and say, well, you didn't follow your own rules, and so we think you should be recalled, or we think you should be sanctioned for not following your own rules, or whatever. But they have no teeth as citizens. In other words, you could have a lawsuit by citizens saying that you spent the money wrong. You know, there is a mechanism for that. And of course, there's all kinds of ways people can sue you. But this is not really one of them. This is an internal document for yourselves. At least that's certainly what I would argue if a citizen wanted to argue.
Excuse me. I have a quick question. So, on the short version, it says these actions include but are not limited to. Are the options in the long version options that can be carried out in the short version, because it says not limited to? So if you did the short version, you could still follow the long version if you felt like those things were necessary. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Just a thought. It's not a if-then situation,
Right.
but it does give you all of those options still without nailing your feet to the board for some of that stuff that might be gray. But I like if-thens, but I don't know. It's torn. I really don't know how I feel about this, guys.
I don't know, I still like seeing what, if you do this, this is the consequence for it, so you know exactly what you're stepping into.
I respect that.
I kind of look at this as more of a standard and not necessarily a direction of this is exactly what's going to happen.
But I feel like that's what he's saying.
Well, I think it's giving the commission options. If there's an issue, these are the things that we could choose to
Given a
do.
roadmap that you could follow, but it's
That's-
not necessarily
What?
100%, this is what's gonna happen.
But I feel like that's exactly what, is that not what you're saying? Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying. So you guys are saying
We're
something
all
different
over the
than
board
him.
on this.
That's why I'm like,
Let me just point you to before number 1, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sentence says commission actions can include, but is not limited to. So,
It is the short version.
it
With
is
a
the
long
short
format.
version with some, I mean, no matter what, you can do what you choose to do.
Right.
This is parameters.
Short version with
And then-
suggestions added to it.
Yes, it is.
One point of note in the long version is the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph and the 5th paragraph, so the last 2 paragraphs of that are, one ends with and one contains the language, the action of the city commission shall be final and not subject to further review. And so it adds a layer of finality to that action that's not necessarily in the short version.
That's true. Although I think practically, that would be the case no matter what. Once you made, unless, okay, let's do a little bit of Robert's Rules of Order here, but if you voted to do something, no matter what your code said, and let's say it was 3-2, and it's not gonna be, that action is not gonna be reconsidered unless one of the people who voted in the, one of the 3, ones who won, one of the people who won asks that it be reconsidered, in the majority. And it's an odd rule because they don't want the minority to be able to keep bringing up something we already decided. But if you guys make a decision and then one of us comes to you and says, oh, we didn't realize, then one of the people in the majority can say, let's just reconsider it on it has to be on the next agenda. Or I have actually seen, I'm not even saying, I'm like, well, okay, I'll say it, but don't do it. I've seen, I worked with a guy who, he would vote, if he thought his side, wherever he wanted to land, was going to be a 3-2 split or whatever, he would vote with the other side just so he could bring it back the next time, which was a problem. So we don't want to play with the Robert's Rules of Order in that fashion. But I guess my point is, for all practical purposes, it's going to be done once it's done. Yes, ma'am.
I don't have a problem with the long version, but I wish we could add discuss and counseling the individual on the violations as, instead of 5, list 6 things, make that an outlined option.
That's what you're saying.
And to me, that's the one thing from the short version that I truly appreciate outstanding from the list of 5. That's the one thing that I lean towards the short version because of. that being like an outlined, I know it says but not limited to, but if it's a clearly defined option, I would feel much better about that personally. And I would be able to support the long version in that case. That's fine.
So add it, sounds like you would like to add a new number one.
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be number two
Number
because,
two,
yeah,
you're
legal
right.
reasons I
Yes,
think
number
trump it
two.
all.
That says, discussing and counseling the individual, discussing with and counseling the individual on a violation.
Thoughts on that?
Well, I actually agree with you, because your tendency is gonna be to look at these 5 options and pick one.
Right. That's why I don't like that option. Like, that's why.
That would just be a tendency, just like a natural human tendency. Oh, well, you know, I can pick,
These are my 5 things
I'm
to
gonna
do.
skip over that sentence that says can include but not limited to and go to the 5 things that are obvious.
Anybody else?
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with that.
Does that still work for you, Jamie?
How about discussing? And here's what I've written, and I think it could be better written, but you'll get my drift. Discussing or counseling with or for the individual. In other words, you may not want to be the counselor. You may want to counsel with, or you may want to say, go get counseling. So how can that be better worded?
Tammy, I have a question. In the case that somebody needed counseling, shouldn't
There you
it
go.
shouldn't it be written? When they go in to talk to them, shouldn't there also be a document that is given to them about why they're being spoken to?
Counseling with,
The commissioner who
The
has
commissioner.
violated this. Shouldn't it
um,
not just be verbal?
I think it would depend.
Yeah.
I think that, given the case law, there may be times where you really just want it to be verbal.
Okay. I can see that too.
So, the language that Rachel has come up with is discussion and counseling, or discuss and counsel. And discuss and counsel with.
Discussion and counsel. Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yes, she wants discuss, referral. So,
How about that?
okay, discussion
And,
and counseling with or for the individual, with or for the individual on the violations. Yeah. Discussion
yeah.
and or counseling with or for the individual on the violations would be your new number 2. Does that language work?
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you. So much better.
Get that. Mark mine out. So, okay. Anything else? Okay, I think, anything else then about the ethics code? Questions, discussion, anything else in it? I know we've already had one discussion about it, and I didn't really, I should have at that point given you your options on that last page. Anything else about the ethics code that we want to discuss? Okay. Anything else about the rest of the handbook? that you had questions about or discussion. Anything else?
I don't want to say that publicly. I'm laughing. It's just, I'm being silly. I don't want to say it publicly.
Tell me later.
Or-
Well,
It's good.
I'd like to thank the staff for doing a great job putting it together. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bob, yeah, it really was.
Well, thanks for putting it together for us. It's good
Unless we
stuff.
did the ethics code and sometimes some stuff, yeah.
We needed to have copies, he did.
He did, that's his part.
He did.
Okay, hold on a second.
Are you rewording something yet again? I said, are you rewording something again?
Probably.
I am, not rewording, but I'm.
Okay.
So. It probably makes sense to, do a motion just regarding the code of ethics. So, if we don't have.
Maybe would it be possible to make a motion to recommend adoption of the handbook with the revisions to the code of ethics?
Because yes, but we need to wait and do that under number 5.
Okay, so we're ready to move to 5 then? Is that what we're saying? Or do we
Ready to
need-
vote.
And, yeah, I think so.
Okay. Consideration, discussion, and possible action to adopt a Perkins City Commission handbook.
So would you like for me to make that motion then? Because I would be happy to do that. I'd make a motion to adopt the City Commission handbook as written with revisions to the code of ethics as recommended.
Second.
Okay, hold on. Revisions to the code of, to the long version of the code of ethics is recommended.
Yes.
Or short version, whichever.
Yeah, no, I'd make a recommendation to adopt with revision to the long version of the code of ethics as recommended.
I second that.
To adopt the city commission handbook as written with revisions to the long version of the code of ethics as recommended, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Nice.
Cool. Right. Eric?
Yes.
Autumn?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah? Justin?
Yes.
Okay, before we move on, I would ask that every one of you take the short version out of your book and hand it to me. So that never gets left in a book and gets confusing for somebody.
Signed it too.
Oh, you're good.
In case I want to look at it again sometime.
Oh, okay. And then we will, get to you. And I'll just probably bring it, or maybe we'll bring it the next meeting, a whole new code of ethics for you to substitute in your book. Just another printout with this one change that you've decided. And then, that's exciting. We have a book. We have a book.
Good job, guys. So exciting.
Great job.
All around.
And
It is exciting.
one of the reasons I think it's great that you've got this done is because the commission's gonna change, and wouldn't you have, and I hope you would have liked to have something like this when you started.
Definitely.
So,
And as, just a general comment, as accessible as things are online, My birth decade makes me having a paper copy in my hand much a happier person.
Oh, does it? Okay.
It does. I just,
Me too, me too.
I
Well,
like
and-
hard
and
copies as well.
I
don't
will
like
have,
e-copies and
I
stuff.
will ultimately have a, electronic version online.
And did everybody get the invite to the Google Drive?
Yes. I like electronic forms.
I know, that's great.
That was a great idea.
It's a great idea. I'm glad to have it. It's super easy for meeting, putting everything in a meeting folder. That's wonderful.
It's not something though that's gonna go on the city's, web page or be accessible, because again, it's yours, it's for you. And we'll get it to you in whatever format you desire.
All right, we done now with that section? Is there any in discussion regarding long-range goals and planning? I think we're just gonna postpone this till,
Do we need a motion to table that or anything?
No, there's no action.
No, because we're not going to, again, Robert's rules, technically if you table something or you table it, you have to take it up the next meeting, or it's, gosh, it can't even be deemed denied. I don't like the word tabled at
Okay.
all, but, if you table it or continue it, then you have to continue it to a particular date, and we don't know yet when David's going to be available. And we want, I really felt like this needed to be, not to just be not dealt with tonight, because I really think when you discuss long-range planning, it will be most valuable if you have both Bob and David here. And so, I talked to David, and he's glad to come back, and we'll get that on your agenda as another special meeting, but not anytime real soon. We'll figure out what we need. We'll make sure we have 5 commissioners.
all right, so no action on that, and that'll be
No
reviewed
action.
later. Come back to that later. All right, so I'll move we adjourn then.
I'll second.
Mayor?
Yes.
Sarah? Yes. Aaron?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Justin?
Yes.
Okay, everybody, thanks.
No, you're good. Thank you.
Did it? Yeah, you. May I have your orange stick, please?
Justin, I figured out my, what do you call it?
Hotspot?
Hotspot.
Good.
But I have to go into AT&T and have them completely rerun it, rename it to something different, and it still takes 10 minutes before my phone comes up
So,
on.
I don't.
Really?
But it usually does,
To come back.
so I'm just gonna see if it came up yet.
Just figure it out, and, look at the text messages and website, Facebook, but Annie will be there